Let's take a look at some perfect square trinomials. So very first thing I want to do actually with this first example though is let's just factor this. I just want to show you what a perfect square trinomial is. So let's factor this. So since there's nothing up front, right? Just a 1, we can get away with doing this the easy way where they both get an x. And then we're looking for numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10. So in this case, that's 5 and 5, right? So, and they both be positive. Okay, so those are the factors, right? But another way of writing that is just x plus 5 squared, right? Yeah, x plus 5 times itself, right? X plus 5, that's x plus 5 squared. So this is a perfect square trinomial, we say, right? Now, that was easy enough just to factor that and notice it and then just write it in that way, right? But some of these other ones are a little bit more difficult to factor, right, as you look at them, where we can use a little shortcut to kind of let you factor that a little easier. So I'm just going to come at this a different way now. So we know, well, first thing, if we just want to write it out quickly, we need to just decide whether or not we actually have a perfect square trinomial. And it will be a perfect square trinomial if the first term, you can take the square root, right? So it's a perfect square. And this one we can, right? It's x. Square root of x squared is x. The last term, square root of 25 is 5, so we're looking good. But then with those two numbers, it's double. If I multiply those two numbers, like multiply these together times 2, I should be getting this middle one. So in other words, if I go 2 times these two, so 5 times x, that should give me this middle term. And it does, right? This is 10x. So as soon as I know this is a perfect square trinomial, then I can just jump right to it. Then I can just say, okay, the square root of this first one is x. So I'm just going to write my bracket. Bracket. And say, okay, it's x. And then it's plus. And then square root of the last one is 5. And then squared. And that's really it. Now, the only thing we have to worry about is whether or not it's plus or whether it's minus. And since this one ended up being like plus 10x, then my answer will be plus 5. We'll see some other examples come up a little later, and we'll deal with that when it comes up. So, all right. So let's look at B. So in this case, we could factor it, right? That would work. This one would be a little tougher, right? We'd have to like multiply by 4 times 9 and do the whole thing. But let's just see if it's a perfect square trinomial. So square root of 4m squared is 2m. Square root of 9n squared is 3n. So it should be the case that 2 times these guys, so times 2m times 3n should be 12mn. And is it? So 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, and then mn. So it is, right? So what that means is this is a perfect square trinomial, and we can just jump right to the chase, just get it all ready to throw in. And then it's just our two numbers. So it's just going to, our two square roots. So 2m. And since it's plus in the middle, it's going to be plus, and then the square root of the last term there, 3n. There you go. Okay, so let's look at C. So let's test this out. We say, okay, 16y squared. So that would be 4y. And the last one, square root of 25, is 5. So then it should be, like if this actually is a perfect square trinomial, it should be the case that 2 times 4y times 5 would be 20y. So 2 times 4 is 8, times 5 is 40, not 20. So this one is not a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so moving on to the next one. So looking at D. Well, in this case, we're not even there at all yet, right? Because I can't even take the square root of that first one. But remember what we should always do? We should always factor out what we can first, right? So let's see. These all are even numbers, so I can factor a 2 out of this. So 2. And then what we have left is x squared plus 8x plus 16. And now this second factor is looking better, right? Like this might be a candidate because square root of x squared is x. Square root of 16 is 4. Okay, so now it should be the case that 2 times 4 times x should give me the middle number if that's a perfect square trinomial. And it does. All right, so we're good to go. So then we can just have the 2 hanging out up front. So 2. And then we know it's going to take this form where there'll be brackets and it'll be squared, right? Because it's a perfect square trinomial. And then it's just our 2 square roots. So x, and then it's plus 4. Okay. All right, for the last one. Looks pretty messy, but I bet you we can clean this up a bit by factoring some stuff out. So 75, 90, and 27. I can factor a 3 out of that. So 3. And then I also see that there's an x in every one of these terms. So I can factor out 3x. Now going back through it again, 75 divided by the 3 I took out is 25. And I still have x squared. And the 90 divided by the 3 I took out is now negative 30. And then factored out an x, so now we just have x, y. And then the last one, 27 divided by the 3 I took out is so positive 9, and then y squared. All right, so this is looking better, right? So now I can see, okay, this first term here, the square root of 25x squared is just 5x. And the square root of 9y squared is 3y. Now, if this really is a perfect square trinomial, then it should be the case that 2 times 5x times 3y should give me my middle term there, right? Now, it doesn't quite, like, it won't work out for the negative, though, right? But let's just ignore the negative for a second. I'll show you when we put it together what'll make that work. In the end, it's because of this negative. It really would be the square root of 9y squared is really negative 3y. That's what's going to allow us to have that negative there. But either way, let's just look at the values right now, or the magnitude of the numbers. So 2 times 5 is 10, times 3 is 30, and then xy. So we're good to go there, right? So let's write it out. So we got 3x, and then it is a perfect square trinomial, so I know it's going to take this form, squared. And then square root of 25x squared is 5x, so it's just 5x. And then it's going to be 3y, right, the other one. And then this is where the negative comes in, right? So you can think about this as being like negative 3y, or if that middle term was negative, then we just have to make it subtraction, right, instead of addition. And that's it.